Hello and welcome back to the Master Division of the Intermezzo Championship. After the World Championship 2025 has finished, we can now come back to taking a look at the current Intermezzo Championship season, where, if you remember it, I have one game finished already, which I was able to win against Arne and Danny Boy. In that game, Arne got hit quite heavily by the military, and it turned into a two-player game during H2 when he resigned, where I was then able to win against Danny Boy. And today we are going to take a look at a game against Pajada and Brightfuture. And as you can see, Pajada, same as I, also started with a win. So it could be important to maybe finish before him in that game to still maybe remain at the first position in the standings. While for Brightfuture, he hasn't finished any games so far, so it's completely unclear and which direction the season will be going for him. Also, maybe some of you heard it on Discord. Pajada actually announced that he will take a break from tournament organizing for a year. And the International Intermezzo Championship will now for a year be organized by Grotz, while the World Championship and the Transcontinental Ladder will be organized for a year by Wolves. And with that, I also want to use the opportunity again to say a very big thanks to Pajada for building up this community, putting lots of effort and time into organizing these tournaments. We wouldn't be here without him, and all of his efforts are extremely appreciated. So, yeah, a very big thanks. And now, of course, we are interested to see what we can expect from the game against Pajada and Brightfuture. In this game, I am playing in the third position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And there is some, only a little bit of theater synergy in H3. Only Chaplin is there, no Hollywood, no other theater leaders. We have Marie Curie, Steve Jobs, and Einstein as some lab and science leaders. We have Gandhi in the Manhattan Project for the military. There's Pierre and Mandela. And then we also have the Red Cross, the space flight in the game. In H2, we have some very strong wonders. Ocean Liner, Suez, Railroad, Harvard College, all are there. There's also Ocean Liner together with Maria Theresa, James Watt with the Railroad, James Cook with the Suez Canal, so a lot of very strong combinations. We also have Nobel as a very solid leader, Antoni Gaudi basically being the only culture leader in H2, and then we have two military action leaders with Napoleon and Robespierre, one military action leader in H1 with Joan of Arc, Nostradamus, Genghis Khan, and Barbarossa can help, all with the strength, Barbarossa and Columbus maybe to set up for a colonization game. We have Michelangelo potentially together with St. Peter's Basilica, and also Gutenberg is there for some lab and printing press synergy. We have a lot of solutions for the happy faces in H1 with St. Peter's Basilica, Forbidden City, and Great Wall. There's the Silk Road, but no Universitas. Brightfuture is playing in the first position in this game, and he starts by taking the Rome Roads. There are a lot of leaders in the row, so he's guaranteed to get one at the next turn, so I think Rome Roads looks like a very good pick for him here. Pajada will then just go for Hammurabi, could have taken one of those leaders plus a yellow card, maybe for Sun Tzu if he wants to go for something military heavy, which of course he sometimes really likes to do, but I think Hammurabi is just very strong, so I think that also looks like a very solid pick for him. And then it's my turn, and I have some leaders to choose from here. If I take one of Homer and Moses, I even can take two yellow cards in addition to them, or I could go for Sun Tzu, maybe trying to set up something militarily heavy, or maybe setting up for a colonization game, but I would only get one yellow card, and with that at the end I decided to take actually both of those yellow cards, and then the question is which leader do I want to go for. Moses maybe being the bit more safe pick, because I don't know which of those wonders will be revealed. Maybe only the Hanging Gardens will be revealed. Maybe the Colosseum will be taken by Pajada, who has Hammurabi. So there is a chance that maybe I don't get a nice wonder if I go for Homer. But generally, I just think Homer is the stronger leader. It gives me some resources that I can use for the military. And in addition to that, a permanent happy face, which I think is quite strong. And so even with not knowing whether I get a nice wonder to put him under when he leaves the play, I was still willing to take him here. And now, of course, I was very interested to see which wonders will be revealed. The Hanging Gardens will be revealed, and also the Pyramids, so there should hopefully be a wonder to choose for me. Brightfuture goes for Sun Tzu, takes the Engineering Genius interestingly, and then builds a mine. With the Engineering Genius, he could potentially even just finish the Rome roads at the next turn, or maybe go for a lab at the next turn, and then guaranteed be able to finish the Rome roads in 2 turns. So that's not bad. Nonetheless, the Rome roads take a lot of civil actions. He is delaying the election of Sun Tzu, so he delays getting those card draws. And with that, I think Engineering Genius for 2 is a bit expensive, and maybe I would prefer to just elect Sun Tzu here and increase population. That of course would mean that Pajada gets then the Engineering Genius for 1 civil action and could maybe go for a very strong start with Hammurabi, so maybe Brightfuture also took the Engineering Genius partly for hate draft reasons here. Pajada goes for Hammurabi, builds a mine, increases his population, and then he's willing to take the pyramids for an additional civil action here. It's just a very strong wonder. There's also the Forbidden City coming down the road, but if he doesn't take any wonder this turn, he can only load up on some yellow cards, which is not that great, and so he just commits to the pyramids. That means for my turn, the Hanging Gardens will be available to take, but also the Forbidden City is there, and I mean, in the Forbidden City, the ignored unhappy workers, that part of the wonder, maybe you don't really need that early, but still getting this additional civil action going early, even though the wonder is a bit more costly than the pyramids, is still quite interesting. And with that, I decided that I rather want to go for the Forbidden City than for the Hanging Gardens. Then the question is, am I willing to take the Forbidden City already this turn for 2 civil actions, or do I think I have good chances to get it at the next turn for 1 civil action cheaper, and then I could increase my population and maybe take the urban growth with my last civil action. And in order for the Forbidden City to be discarded before my next turn, Brightfuture would need to take this Frugality, which he could potentially do if he maybe also wants to go for doing a little bit of damage to me, but generally, after he has invested already 2 civil actions into that Engineering Genius, has the Rome roads, which costs a total of 4 civil actions, I think it would be quite a heavy price for him to pay to take that Frugality, only to make the Forbidden City be discarded before my next turn, and with that I thought I have good chances to get that for 1 civil action, and with that I was willing to increase my population here and take the urban growth. And then I draw some cards, the Cultural Influence and also the Developed Territory. Brightfuture this turn will go for Sun Tzu, so he isn't just finishing the Rome roads, instead gets those draws going and then can also build a second lab, meaning he gets some science production going, so I think that seems like the best option for him. With his last civil action, he could have now taken the Frugality, but I think for himself it's clearly better to build that step, and then he is able to finish the Rome roads at the next turn, either taking a card from the row if he wants to, or just increasing his population without getting into consumption thanks to the additional yellow token from the Rome roads, and then also being prepared for events like development of religion or warfare. Pajada builds the second lab. He has now 4 civil actions to work with Hammurabi, and there are actually 2 copies of Richland available for him, so he takes both of those, can now very quickly get into either irrigation or iron if he gets one of those techs at some point, and then he has still 2 civil actions left, and he decides to go for Nostradamus here. Brightfuture has Sun Tzu, he maybe doesn't get that many draws with Hammurabi, so just having the ability to go for some additional strength with Nostradamus could be quite helpful for him, but he isn't electing him right now and still wants to keep the economical value that Hammurabi offers to him. There would have been also a monarchy in the row, but I think it would have been a bit expensive to take it for 3 for Pajada here. Now it's my turn, I built a second lab, get some science production going, and I also really wanted to take that Forbidden City here, because I just want to make sure that I have a wonder lying around for a mare, so I go for the Forbidden City. And then there were mainly 2 cards that I was thinking about taking here, and the question is, do I want to take both, or do I maybe only want to take one of those and then maybe either build a step or increase my population with the Frugality? And the cards that I'm talking about are the Masonry and Columbus. Of course, Warfare can also be a fine card to take, but I don't have that much additional science production, and so that I think is the card that I would value that a little bit less than going for Columbus or Masonry here. Masonry, with not having built any wonder, with having a 4-step wonder with the Forbidden City, is just quite strong. There are interesting wonders like the Silk Road, the Great Wall, Railroad, Ocean Liner, Suez Canal that all profit quite heavily from the Masonry, because the Masonry can even save 2 civil actions while building those wonders. And yeah, so I think that's quite a valuable technology for me here. And then there's also Columbus. I have drawn the developed territory with Homer. I think it's generally quite nice if you make sure to have a leader in hand so that you can replace him whenever you feel like, and so that you don't get into an awkward situation at the end of H1 when you maybe still need a leader and then need to pay a lot of civil actions to replace Homer in time. So I could just get a very solid leader now for one civil action. When there's a Suez Canal in the game, I just generally value Columbus quite heavily, and with that, at the end, I was willing to take both cards, the Masonry and Columbus. I have my leader in hand, I have the Masonry, which hopefully will generate me some value over the course of the game, and with that, I at the end was willing to pick both of those cards. I don't go into consumption yet, and then maybe in 2 turns I can finish the Forbidden City and will have an additional civil action up and running. I will then get some draws. I draw another colony, probably not one that I prefer over the developed territory for Columbus, but still nice to have. Brightfuture this turn will finish the Rome roads, has 1 civil action left, could go for the alchemy, for the monarchy, but instead he wants to make sure to increase his population, and with that is prepared also for some developments, so I think that is a fine choice. Now it's Pajada's turn, and he is actually the first one to see it, not something that you see too often in a game with Sun Tzu and Hammurabi, that Hammurabi is the one who seeds first, but here it happens. Pajada seemingly has drawn an event that he finds fine to push into the deck. The development of planning is revealed, and the options for that, there are some interesting ones: trade routes, civil life, and warfare. Pajada chooses the development of trade routes here and just gets some additional science, food, and resources. He will increase his population this turn, increases his population again, builds a step of the pyramids, and then takes the monarchy, which he can maybe revolt into at some point with Hammurabi, or potentially also go for peacefully. And he has the pyramids in addition to the monarchy, so the monarchy can serve nicely as a long-term solution here for him. And actually, with the last civil action that he still has here, thanks to Hammurabi, he is using one of the rich lands to build a 3rd farm. I mean, he had a full hand, so he needs to do something. And like this, he gets a bit of additional food production. The farm might replace itself by the end of H1. And then that is, I think, not that bad to have that 3rd farm up and running. Now it is my turn. I won't push. The moment I don't have any tactic, I don't know if I have a nice opportunity to increase my strength. I will build 2 stages of the Forbidden City this turn with the Masonry. I take the Breakthrough. That's a card that I definitely want to take for 1 civil action. I think that additional science is extremely helpful for me here. And then I could either just increase my population 2 times with using the Frugality, or I could increase my population once without the Frugality to get out of corruption. Or I could increase with the Frugality and then use Homer's resources to build a warrior, but I don't like that too much, because depending on what tactic I draw, it could be nice to maybe not have committed to an additional warrior. Also, by the way, I have taken the development of civil life from the development of planning to develop the Masonry for 1 science less. And when I increased my population without using the Frugality, I have 1 civil action left that I can use, and what I thought about here is to take the Swordsman. Generally, it's of course important to have military technology. Brightfuture has Sun Tzu, so it could still end up being a military-heavy game. Of course, he might take knights, and at the end, having the swordsman might not be too great, but still, if I don't take the swordsman here, there's a chance that I might miss out on a military tech completely. Having the swordsman in hand allows me to, for certain, be able to use Homer's resources if I would like to. For example, at the next turn, I could develop the swordsman with the breakthrough, and then just upgrade a warrior to swordsman for free and still have enough resources guaranteed to also finish the Forbidden City. And with all of that, I at the end thought it is important to take the swordsman here, just making sure that I have something in hand to increase my strength, and so I increased my population without the Frugality to also take the swordsman. I then just keep the developed territory and a colonization card in my hand. I draw 2 cards, another colonization card and a plunder. Brightfuture seeds and opens the development of settlement. He this turn will go for the St. Peter's Basilica, and the Engineering Genius increases his population, builds a warrior to get out of corruption, and can finish the St. Peter's Basilica quite effectively with using the Engineering Genius. Has then some additional happy phase, which also might allow him to put more workers into the military. With both me and Pajada already having committed to a leader, maybe there's also a chance that he could go for Barbarossa at the next turn, which could allow him to build up a lot of military, especially now that the development of agriculture is revealed, giving him even more food. Pajada this turn will finish the pyramids, takes the bread and circuses, there's Pierre in the game, there's Antoni Gaudi in the game, and then he also takes the knights, makes sure to get that first copy, is willing to take the knights over the swordsmen, maybe potentially has also already a tactic for them in hand, and then he will increase his population to use his last civil action. Now it's my turn. I again don't want to push as I want to keep my colony for Columbus. This turn I can finish the Forbidden City for 1 civil action thanks to the masonry. I am now also on 5 civil actions, same as Pajada, and then I have still 4 civil actions left. And there's one card on the row that I need to think what I want to do about this, because the knights are coming down the row, and I could take them of course for 3, but it would be very expensive. If I don't take them, then of course there's a chance that Brightfuture might take them, and then it could end up happening that the Knight's tactic gets upgraded, which is not ideal for me with me having swordsmen. But I could also make sure to let the Knight stay on 3 civil actions, which I think makes a very big difference on how easily Brightfuture is able to go for those Knights. For example, if the Knights are on 2 civil actions, he could take the Knights, take Barbarossa, elect Barbarossa, develop the Knights, and go for 2 Barbarossa activations. Or if he doesn't want to go for Barbarossa, he can develop the Knights, increase his population, build a Knight, and get out of corruption. While if the Knights stay on 3 civil actions, he is missing a civil actions to do those things, meaning taking them would mean corruption. He would invest 3 civil actions, so that would be quite expensive, and if he doesn't take the Knights, would then be able to take the Knights at my next turn. I thought that might be the best solution for that. However, there was then another question that I had to answer for myself, and that is, with me hoping that I might still get the Knights at the next turn, am I still willing to maybe commit into Swordsman now, being able to use Homer's resource to go for a free upgrade from Warriors to Swordsman, then maybe again being able to use a resource from Homer at the next turn with maybe building an additional Swordsman? Or do I not want to do this, because I might still have some hopes to get into Knights and then maybe either get a Knights tactic, because the thing is, even if Brightfuture doesn't get the Knights, there's Genghis Khan coming down the row, so even if I get the Knights, he could still go for a Knights tactic that then might get upgraded. So I could potentially be worthwhile to delay the commitment, but the thing is, I also have a relatively full hand. Developing the swordsman just very nicely makes space in my hand, and I just can use the resource of Homer, and at the end I, with that, was willing to develop the swordsman already. First of all, I will use the frugality, I will develop the swordsman, go for an upgrade for free, I will increase my population again. There are some interesting yellow cards that I could take, and normally I think I would certainly take the cultural heritage here for some additional science, but as said, I want to let the Knights stay on 3 civil actions here for Brightfuture, as I do think that makes a very big difference for him how easily he can take those Knights, and I think him going for Barbarossa and Knights certainly would have a lot of potential if he has the right tactic and could be quite threatening. And so instead of the cultural heritage, I will just end up going for the urban growth, which could still be a useful card to have. There's still a copy of alchemy left, and with the masonry I could go for some very cheap alchemy upgrades at some point. At the end of my turn, I can again want to keep the developed territory for Columbus, and then I can sadly only keep one of those defense cards. I draw actually another colony here, the inhabited territory, so now I could even have some choices for Columbus, which is nice. Brightfuture this turn goes for the St. Peter's Basilica, so he doesn't take the Knights for 3, which I think would just be too expensive for him. He finishes the St. Peter's Basilica, and with increasing his population he can also get out of corruption. Also, he is actually already revealing the Phalanx tactic, meaning at the next turn he could maybe go for Genghis Khan and upgrade that, or maybe he still has some hopes that he might get the Knights at his next turn. And then pajada is increasing his population. He could potentially have done a revolution into monarchy here, but instead he rather wants to make sure to get some iron upgrades going. As we saw at the beginning, there are some very strong H2 wonders in the game, and those are a lot easier to build if you have already some upgraded mines up and running, so he values that quite highly, and maybe he could still do a revolution at the next turn if he wants to. Now it's my turn. I again don't want to push, and I use Homer's resource again to build an additional swordsman. I will take the knights in hand here to deny them from Brightfuture, even though he might just go for Genghis Khan anyway, but if I leave him the knights, who knows, maybe he will then go for the knights and go for Michelangelo instead, who with the St. Peter's Basilica could score him a lot of culture. So I do think it's still important to take those knights here also, because I haven't drawn a tactic yet. The phalanx tactic is the only tactic that I have knowledge of, and being able to go for the tactic, making sure that I can go for the tactic, could turn out to be quite important. And yeah, so first of all I use Homer. I will then go for Columbus. It certainly could be that I get another turn in H1 with 12 cards being left. I think I will take 2 cards from the row. Then there are 8 cards left on Brightfuture's turn, and I thought about their turns, and I came to the conclusion that it is possible that they could end the age, and with that I didn't want to take the risk and just wanted to make sure to elect Columbus here. I then take the knights in hand. Generally, it's maybe a bit tricky to spend the civil actions effectively here. Not a lot of yellow cards. One yellow card that is available is the patriotism, so I wanted to make sure to take that. After that I have still 2 civil actions left. I decided to go for the bread and circuses as well. I don't really need the happy faces in the near future, but it could be nice to have that lying around for the end of H2. I can then maybe develop it. I'm prepared for Pierre, can go for some very cheap happy face buildings, and together with the Forbidden City plus the Homer happy face, I then easily, even with only having an H1 happy face solution, should have enough happy faces for the rest of the game. I have 1 civil action left. Potentially I could use the urban growth to build a religion, but I don't really need that, and so at the end I just also took the irrigation, meaning I took 4 cards for 1 civil action. All of them, maybe I don't need that much. The patriotism might be nice. The knights, of course, are important in case I don't draw an infantry tactic, which is likely. I don't have that many draws, so those are important cards. Bread and circuses and irrigations, maybe boost cards that could potentially be nice to have for later. Irrigation might be interesting if I get the ocean liner, or I can maybe just go for some irrigation upgrades soon, which also could end up being fine. And so, yeah, with that, I at least got a bunch of cards all for 1 civil action, which is not bad. The next turn I have a full hand, but I can develop the knights, I can play the patriotism, and with that hopefully I will be fine. Now at the end of my turn I had to think about my discard, and the question is, do I want to stay flexible, keeping both colonies for Columbus, being able to choose from, or do I rather prioritize keeping the defense card, which could still be relevant if Brightfuture goes for Genghis Khan and maybe upgrades the tactic, and things certainly could get a bit dangerous, especially with me being on 2 military actions for the moment, also with the Suez Canal being the game, and with me getting already 1 colony with Columbus, having the defense card available to potentially win a colony could also be quite important. And with that I made a decision actually to already commit to a colony, and as you can see, I actually discarded the inhabited one here. And the reason for that is that I have a bunch of free population. Even when I lose the yellow tokens, those population are still all happy. And especially if I need to invest into the knights in order to maybe go for any tactic, then I think the 3 additional signs from the developed territory are just extremely valuable for me here, and more valuable than the additional population and the additional yellow token that the inhabited territory would give me. So I rather kept the developed territory, and I was relatively certain that that will be the stronger colony for myself, so I didn't want to keep the flexibility and instead rather wanted to keep the defense card here. Also, the next turn there's a chance that I might get the Silk Road and could then maybe play the patriotism even with the Silk Road bonus potentially. Brightfuture, as you can see, will indeed go for Genghis Khan, but he has found an even more fitting tactic for him, the heavy cavalry. He will reveal that if he goes for Genghis Khan now, he can upgrade the tactic. He will go for Genghis Khan, upgrades the tactic, goes for the Code of Laws. He has a bunch of signs saved up, so I think that makes a lot of sense. And then he also is actually willing to take the iron here. I'm not that certain about taking the iron because it's already late in H1. Of course, he can go for some upgrades immediately the next turn. As I said, there are some strong H2 wonders, so I don't think it's a bad choice. But taking corruption for that instead of just maybe increasing his population, potentially even taking the printing press here. He has a bunch of repopulation and some happy faces with the St. Peter's Basilica. I'm not sure if I would go for that, but it definitely can still work out very fine for him being able to get some upgrades going at his next turn. With him having Genghis Khan, or there's also the danger that he might go for Great Wall at the next turn, which could allow him to go for quite a threatening amount of strength. Pajada this turn is responding to the strength push by Brightfuture. He develops the knights, builds one, takes the breakthrough, which I think is extremely valuable for him, and then he also goes for the Silk Road. He will be able to use the breakthrough for an additional science, and generally getting some more science production is very valuable for him. Also, it allows him to spend his civil actions somewhat effectively this turn. Otherwise, he could just take some cards, and it's maybe not that clear what cards he really wants to take here. So I think the Silk Road is a good pick here, even though there could of course be the downside that he has now his wonder slot not open any longer, meaning he might miss out on the opportunity to go for a strong early H2 wonder. But with the lack of spending his civil actions in a nice way, if he doesn't go for the Silk Road, I think the Silk Road should be a good pick here. And he already builds the first step of it. And it also means that potentially he could even do a revolution to monarchy at the next turn with already using the breakthrough with the Silk Road bonus. Now it is my turn, and as you can see, H2 actually started, so my opponents indeed did take that many cards that the H ended, and electing Columbus at the turn before was very important. And as you can see, I will actually use him for the developed territory immediately. And I could of course potentially wait to get a better colony, but I kind of need to increase my strength because I have of course now 3 military actions, but only because of the patriotism, and with only having 2, I need to increase my strength in order to be able to defend against an aggression from Brightfuture. With not having any infantry tactic, but the phalanx being available to copy soon, I do think I kind of should invest into knights here. And then I use some military actions this turn, so I don't really get a lot of draws maybe going. I guess I will actually get some draws, but the real reason why I was willing to deploy that colony already instead of maybe hoping to get lucky and draw an H2 one early on is that the science actually allows me to not only go for the knights, but also for another technology. I will play the patriotism, I will develop the knights, I build one knight going up to 6 strength, I can copy the tactic at the next turn, and as you can see, I then will take the alchemy, develop it, use the urban growth, go for an upgrade, and at the next turn I can go for another upgrade for only 2 resources, so I can very cheaply with the masonry get some science production going, and so with that I was willing to just deploy the developed territory, as that allows me to go for that turn, which I think also allows me to spend my civil actions effectively. I could have not played the patriotism, but then I also would miss the resources to go for another upgrade, so I think it's just a nice spend of a civil action here to play that, and at the next turn I can go for another upgrade, hoping that I then have some solid science production running, because I still need a lot of science for a bunch of things. The government form, cool. Investing 9 science into both knights and swordsmen is not really that ideal. So the more quickly I can get that going, the better. And also you can again see how valuable the 3 additional science from the developed territory here is. Then I draw some cards. Actually the Hussars tactic, which could turn out to be interesting if I build another knight, I can just reveal that instead of copying the phalanx tactic, and also get some additional strength going. Brightfuture doesn't see it. The event deck is moving quite slowly here, even though Pajada at this point has already Nostradamus, and Brightfuture will increase his population, goes down to 0 food, will develop the iron, can go for 2 upgrades, and then he will take the cartography. Doesn't go for the Great Wall here. I do think it could be a strong wonder for him, especially with the St. Peter's Basilica. The happy face from the Great Wall will even be doubled. But then again, same as for Pajada, if he goes for that H1 wonder, he might block himself from potentially strong H2 wonders, so I think it's also a fair choice to just skip that wonder here. Now it's Pajada's turn. He offers the Open Borders Agreement to Brightfuture, so both of them have an additional military action available now. He goes for the bread and circuses. He has a lot of unhappy workers, so if he would have done a revolution to monarchy, he sadly wouldn't have had a free population to build a unit and get out of corruption. With that, he doesn't go for a revolution. Instead, he develops the bread and circuses with the breakthrough, with the Silk Road bonus, builds the bread and circuses, takes the rich land. Interestingly, takes the Code of Laws here, which I'm not certain if I agree. He still needs a government form. He already has an additional civil action from the pyramids. I also don't really need that Code of Laws that much with having an additional civil action from the Forbidden City and also not having that much science, so I think the Code of Laws in this position is maybe a luxury that he doesn't really need, and I in his position would maybe rather, I mean, let's see if he wants to build it warrior. He doesn't build it warrior, so either just building 2 steps on the Silk Road, going for another iron upgrade with the rich land. I guess he actually took the rich land, so that wasn't possible, but building 2 steps or building 1 step and taking the reserves. And the reserves with the Silk Road bonus is basically like a reserves 2. I do think the reserves just offer some more guaranteed value, while I think it's very unclear for him here whether he will ever find a science to develop Code of Laws, and if he does, then he might just block himself from going for other important technologies, so I'm not certain about him spending 2 civil actions for the Code of Laws here. Now it is my turn. I won't push, so the event deck again, not really moving forward very quickly. For my turn I will start by upgrading lab to alchemy, going up to 4 science production. That also gets me out of corruption. And then there's a very interesting leader coming down the road for me. Generally I've used Columbus, I want to have a new leader, and of course the leader that I'm speaking about is James Watt. I could just take James Watt here, but I should have good chances to still get James Watt at the next turn. If my plan is to go for James Watt, then I figured that maybe it could actually be worth it, even though it's expensive, to take the selective breeding for 3 civil actions here. With James Watt it costs the same as the irrigation, but just gives a lot of more value over the course of the game. Taking it for 3 is certainly expensive. I could have taken some yellow cards, for example, but I also don't want to load my hand. I don't want to make it too full with cards. If I just take one of those yellows, I only get 1 yellow. And also I deny the selective breeding from my opponents. Brightfuture and Pajada both haven't any copy of irrigation. Brightfuture of course can still take that. There's also the ocean liner, so they might still find ways to increase their population, but still an early selective breeding maybe could have been nice for them to get some very quick food production up and running. So at the end I was willing to take that for 3 with the plan of going for James Watt, who then hopefully will generate me a lot of value with being able to get discounts for both selective breeding and coal. Then I have still 1 civil action left, and I decided here to take that reserves. Not the most efficient card, but still maybe it can allow me to go for an upgrade quicker at some point. I can play it for food to increase my population, so I just felt like it could be a solid card to have here. I keep the Hussars tactic and the colonization card, draw 2 new cards. As you can see, I was not willing to copy the phalanx tactic here. I'm not in danger of an aggression. There won't be any strength events revealed, so I rather want to get some draws. And I also get rewarded for the choice, because especially the Napoleonic army tactic could be quite interesting here. Napoleonic army tactic normally not being that easily, or it's not that easy to go for that because you need a lot of technologies, but in that case I have already invested some science into both knights and swordsmen anyway, so in this case I should get cannons. The Napoleonic army offers me a very efficient way to get some additional strength here. Brightfuture seeds. The development of markets are revealed. He will just take some additional resources, as he would be stuck on 2 food if he takes the food. He goes for the last iron upgrade, develops the cartography, so we can expect maybe some interesting colonies that will be coming. He then takes the reserves and the irrigation. There's also an early copy of Constitutional Monarchy coming down the row. Brightfuture wasn't willing to take it. Let's see if Pajada will be willing to take it. He seeds the development of science is revealed. Now the event deck is finally flipped. And Pajada will increase his population. Did he take the food from the development of markets? Yes. He uses the rich land to go for 1 more iron upgrade. Builds a knight. Takes the frugality. And he indeed takes the constitutional monarchy. Skips on the cannons for now. But maybe there's a chance he can do revolution at the next turn. And then he has a very nice amount of civil and military actions going. And also he is willing to build some units here. meaning that maybe he can copy the upgraded heavy cavalry tactic at the next turn, which would mean that he takes the strength lead. Now it is my turn, I can't use my politics phase, and I really want to go for James Watt here. I think he has just so much potential. I, of course, don't know yet when I will get coal, but hopefully I will get it at some point, and then I can just go for some very quick upgrades. I thought about just electing James Watt, going for some farm upgrades with the selective breeding. I also thought about variations where I don't take the resource from development of markets, instead food, which also allows me to increase my population. The thing is, with having drawn that Napoleonic army tactic, I just really wanted to make sure to get that copy of cannons. But taking James Watt, then having a bit of a full hand, also taking the cannons is a bit awkward, also to get out of corruption. And so the question is, how do I want to play the turn exactly? I can't really go for James Watt, farm upgrades, and take the cannons. And at the end I took James Watt. I elected him already, but without using his ability for now. I took the cannons, and then I have one civil action left, which I can use to develop the cannons, build one which is just enough to get me out of corruption, and I also will reveal the tactic, making me the strongest. The event deck is just flipped, so it's a nice time to get the strongest. I don't have any aggressions or walls in hand, but my opponents don't know that, so it could also be that me going for that amount of strength might put some pressure on him, maybe force some responses out of them. I don't get any draws, but I have a tactic, and yeah, it's a bit of an investment, but I still, if coal is in the row, I can go for some coal upgrades at the next turn, I can go for some farm upgrades at the next turn, and I hopefully, with having revealed the tactic, will have the strength lead for a while, and with the Napoleonic army tactic being a difficult one to achieve, it's also not that easily possible for my opponents to copy that tactic in the near future. I miss out on some yellow cards like Wave and Efficient upgrade, but I think I just don't have the civil action to take that here. And also the hand space, of course I could have kept James Watt in hand, but then I don't have hand space to take one of those. Brightfuture wants to increase the science production, goes for Nobel, takes the cavalryman, develops one, builds one. He has of course lost the heavy cavalry tactic now that he transitioned out of Genghis Khan, but he can copy the phalanx tactic that he revealed earlier to at least be at 12 strength, and with that he should be safe from an aggression if he has only one H1 defense card in hand. Then it's Pajada's turn. He will indeed just do a revolution, has now 7 civil and at the moment even 5 military actions. Thanks to the open borders agreement, he disbands a warrior, builds a knight that gets him out of corruption, and then with copying the heavy cavalry tactic, he makes sure to not even be among the 2 weakest, thanks to Nostradamus' additional strength. At my turn, I again can't really use my politics phase. As you can see, there's a copy of coal coming down the road, and of course I considered just taking that coal, developing it, going for one upgrade. I do think that could be fine, but with both of my opponents being on iron, I thought maybe it could be fine to wait for coal to fall down to one civil action for me the next turn. Of course, there could be the danger that maybe my opponents could go for denial. Pajada has a lot of civil actions now, but he also still needs some of those to finish the Silk Road. Some yellow cards could be strong for him with having the Silk Road. So there's certainly the danger, but then there could also be the second copy revealed soon. And with that, I was willing to not take the coal here, which allows me to go for some selective breeding upgrades. I can go for 2 upgrades here, getting a lot of food production started, having a lot of population could also allow me to maybe quickly go for one more tactic in case I might get some nice military draws, and then I have 2 civil actions left, meaning while I don't get the resources upgraded earlier, I can take the rich land here, and with my last civil action I could potentially take another card. That would mean, however, that I have a full hand, which could make it a bit awkward to go for the coal at the next turn, so instead I wanted to do something different, and at the end I decided to play the reserves or resources. Then of course I have to do something to get out of corruption again, and I build a knight here, making sure that I'm not among the 2 weakest, so raiders and call to arms doesn't hit me any longer now. And thanks to the rich land, if I get the coal at the next turn, still have just enough resources with James Watt to go for 2 upgrades, which would be quite strong. It's a bit of a risk, and certainly if the second copy isn't revealed soon, maybe Pajada could think about drafting the coal, but at the end I was willing to take that risk. I get some food production started, and I was just hoping that there should be a good chance to still get that coal at the next turn. I draw a card, a Cold War. That's a nice draw. I should have good chances with my tactic to be one of the two strongest. I kind of want to push, so I was happy about the draw. Brightfuture plays the Wave of Nationalism, gets 6 additional resources out of it, builds an additional cavalryman, goes for the irrigation. He doesn't know when and whether he gets the second copy of Selective Breeding, so he rather just wants to make sure to go for one irrigation upgrade with the reserves that allows him to increase his population already at the next turn if he wants to. And then he also takes the Organized Religion, which makes sure that he has a Happy Face solution available. The coal stays on 2 civil actions for pajada, which gave me some hope that maybe pajada is less inclined to go for some hate drafting. For 1 civil action, maybe he could think more about it. First of all, pajada will offer me a scientific cooperation pact here, and I was willing to accept it. It will allow him to go for an interesting technology here. The architecture could have also gone for the code of laws, maybe even the navigation, so I give him some options, but he is on relatively low science. He will very likely take the breakthrough this turn, so he probably has a way to develop some techs. But I have 8 science plus 4. I of course still need a government farm, which is a lot of science only for 1 tech, meaning not that many activations on the pact, but nonetheless I was quite confident and hopeful that I should get a fair share out of this pact. I hopefully will get a coal, which means I can at least develop 1 tech at my next turn. If I don't get a coal, maybe I get a strategy. So I was very happy that pajada offered me that pact, and I was hoping that we both, of course, ideally only I, but and of course pajada probably will also get some nice value out of it, and then we have a bit of an advantage over Brightfuture. Pajada can now develop the architecture, getting 1 activation out of the Scientific Cooperation Pact, can now finish the Silk Road, going up to 3 science production, builds the bread and circuses to get out of corruption. He could now deny the coal, but it would come at a cost of the breakthrough, which I think would just be too big for him. He also takes the navigation. That actually means that the Republic will be discarded before Brightfuture's turn, meaning he might need to wait for the second copy of Conmon, and the government forms generally might be a bit more contested. Of course, I might also still go for the Republic potentially. Now it is my turn. I am the strongest. I have drawn that Cold War, so I want to push that into the deck. And now, finally, almost, we are already getting to the end of H2, and I have now scored my first culture in the whole game. So far, I haven't pushed a single event. I have not had any production, culture production, or any other sources that could give me culture. So a very late point to score the first amount of culture, but better late than never. I see it, the rebellion is revealed, which I was happy to see, because Brightfuture will lose 2 civil actions, so there is 1 opponent who gets damaged by that event. No strength event, but still good reveal by me. Pajada didn't take the coal away, and this turn I definitely want to go for 1 coal upgrade. And I could also go for a second. A card that I definitely want to take is the strategy here, and if I go for the strategy, then it could be an idea to maybe also go for the Republic. But at the end I decided that I am not willing to delay 1 of those upgrades to go for the Republic, which might take a while until I can go for. Anyway, I thought that going for the strategy first might be better here, as with having that Napoleonic army setup, I actually have a lot of military potential, and if I get more military actions, I draw more cards, I have higher chances to hit an aggression or war, so I thought I kind of want to go for strategy first anyway, and then there's still a copy of Republic and Conmon left, meaning I thought I don't necessarily need to take that copy of Republic here, and instead I just went for a second upgrade and took the strategy. I think a very clean and straightforward turn, and I was hoping that pajada might even develop no technology at his next turn, which at the moment looks like that might be the case, and that could actually allow me to develop both the strategy and the bread and circuses with the Scientific Cooperation Pact. Of course, there's maybe the danger that pajada could cancel the pact, but at least then I still have enough science to go for strategy at least, so I was hoping that pajada won't cancel the pact, and that I might be able to develop 2 techs at the next turn. I do draw some cards here, and I do draw an aggression. If I build another cannon at the next turn, develop the strategy, there's certainly the chance that I might be able to pull that aggression off. And with having the Scientific Cooperation Pact, getting some additional science could be quite valuable. Brightfuture Seeds, the vast territory 1 is revealed. I was willing to push the price a little bit, but I wouldn't have liked it that much to win it for 2 units, but at least I would have kept a Napoleonic army tactic. But with me having that strength potential, I think I would prefer not winning it, so I just pushed the price here, and Brightfuture at the end at least is needing to send a cavalryman here and isn't winning it for just a warrior. Then it's Brightfuture's turn. He will increase his population, builds a cavalryman, goes for a farm upgrade, takes the engineering genius, builds another cavalryman, is now at 18 strength. Would still be the strongest if Pajada pushes now because of the Nostradamus strength that Pajada has. Pajada is pushing, but there's actually no strength event instead of Dark Ages, which Pajada with Nostradamus likely had knowledge about. He doesn't lose any science, while I and especially Brightfuture lose quite a bit of science. And losing the science is a bit awkward because, as I said, I thought it would be very strong for me to develop both strategy and the bread and circuses. Now I only can go for the strategy or the bread and circuses, which is a bit bad, but yeah, at least I can still go for the strategy, which is important. Pajada increases his population here, goes for the Transcontinental Railroad. I think the strength could be very important for him. Of course, he sees that I have that strategy in hand, that I can easily go for another cannon, and getting more resource production out of finishing that one is also quite interesting. He takes the scientific method. With the architecture, he can go for some very cheap upgrades. With him not going for Robespierre, who of course also wouldn't really do that much for Pajada, there's only Maria Theresa left, so let's see if Pajada will end up going for her. My turn. I can't really use my politics phase. I have that aggression, but I can't really deploy that right now. But I can prepare for it. I can increase my population, and I do think it's totally worth it here to develop that strategy and build a cannon. Of course, I could also go for a coal upgrade instead, but I have a very good chance to pull off that spy, especially against Brightfuture, who has only 2 military actions, and with that some problems to defend. So I thought I have very good chances of pulling this aggression off, and with that I developed a strategy. I built a cannon, I go up to 31 strength, and then I have 3 civil actions left. The breakthrough is quite a nice card for me to take for 1 civil action. If the Dark Ages wouldn't have been revealed, I now could have developed the bread and circuses and increased my population. Now that I can't develop the bread and circuses, I think I kinda have to take the team sports here for my last 2 civil actions. I really kinda would have liked to maybe take Revolutionary Idea or Reserves or something, or just increase my population and play that turns more civil action effectively, maybe taking journalism or opera in hand. Maybe just having the opera is fine, but I have some military potential here. And then the team sports I think is a nice fit. There's no copy of Organized Religion left, so I will be without a Happy Face solution. I have the Forbidden City with the Homer Happy Face, but especially with my food production I might still need some Happy Faces. And there's Pierre in the game, so I think the team sports at the end is just the best pick for me here. Now I of course was also very interested to see what draws I will be having, because if I draw more aggressions and wars, maybe I could turn this into a very military heavy game. And as you can see, I do actually draw a war over territory and another spy, also the strategic territory. I was quite happy about those draws, and let's see if I go for an aggression or war at the next turn. First of all, Brightfuture seeds. The inhabited territory too is revealed. As you can see, I just passed here. Of course, it's a strong colony to win, but I didn't want to give up on my option of maybe going for a war or an aggression easily. Brightfuture is able to win the colony, but he has to spend another colonization card, meaning he is actually not a single card in hand right now, and with him having not enough science to go for the Conmon, also partly due to the Dark Ages, he is now in a very vulnerable spot. He goes for the cannons, maybe preparing to copy my Napoleonic army tactic at some point, with also taking the rifleman, but with only 18 strength and only getting 1 draw now, I can go for a guaranteed aggression, but of course also potentially for a war over territory. So let's see what will be the better option for me at my turn. And also let's see what Pajada will do to prepare his strength, because maybe he could stay vulnerable as well. First of all, he seeds. There's actually another colony revealed, so Brightfuture might put some of those in there with him having gone for the cartography. However, this time he's not able to win it. I was actually willing to bid, maybe it's an unnecessary risk, but I saw that Pajada was willing to bid 6 for the other territory, And I was just hoping that he would bid 6 again and that I could push the price. But if I would win this, I would give up my military pressure. I, of course, could then maybe declare war, rebuild 2 units, have the tactics up and running again. That might be somewhat fine. I could also maybe go for Suez Canal with the strategic territory, which could be very interesting. So I think maybe it could still be somewhat fine if I win it, but I mainly did it again to just push the price, and it worked. And pajada has to send 2 colonization cards away, which of course might be missing for him now in order to easily be able to defend against a potential aggression from me. But for the moment, maybe it's just enough for him to threaten to defend against an aggression, because I have a guaranteed aggression against Brightfuture if I want to. Pajada will finish the railroad this turn, has now some very solid resource production, could potentially just go for another wonder, potentially could even just take and finish the Harvard College here, which I think could potentially be quite interesting. He instead will make sure to get stronger. Maybe it could be worth it to play it a bit greedy here, with Brightfuture maybe being a bit more vulnerable, but of course he also needs to be concerned about a potential war, and so he rather wants to play it safe here. Develops the navigation, he maybe also has some knowledge about even more colonies coming, takes the revolutionary idea, the reserves, and the urban growth. Now it's my turn, and now I had to decide what I want to do. Do I want to go for the war over territory or for a spy? When I go for the war over territory, I wasn't really that interested in increasing my strength even more. I think I would rather just focus on other things for the turn, but 31 strength is of course enough to potentially already win a war. Pajada is relatively safe, he will still get his production, so he has a lot of resource saved up. Declaring a war against him would be too risky, but I could go for a war against Brightfuture. Nonetheless, he could develop the rifleman, build one, get another phalanx tactic going, which would already put him at 24. Maybe he can even build another unit like a cannon, then preparing to copy the Napoleonic army tactic, and then he would be at 27 strength. And I would only steal 1 yellow token if I don't increase my strength, and I would miss out on some draws. And with that, and with having the scientific cooperation pact, with me being relatively low in science right now, I just felt like going for a spy might be the better call here. And with having 2 spies, I might even be able to get another one off at the following turn. So I decided to go for the spy. Pajada would only need 1 defense card to defend, so despite him having sent 2 away, I was not willing to try going for the aggression against him. Instead, I went for the aggression against Brightfuture. I will then use James Watt to go for 1 more coal upgrade. And then the question is, what do I want to invest into? There are some interesting wonders in a row, which are relatively late, but maybe also with the masonry could still be worth building. I could just increase my population 2 times, maybe take the patriotism or something, maybe develop the team sports, take the cavalryman to be better prepared for H3 tactics. But at the end I thought there's one thing that I can do that might just be best here, because I'm in a situation where I have a relatively strong economy, I have some big military potential, and what I need right now are additional draws to potentially draw impacts, wars, H3 tactics. And I have one way how I can get 5 additional draws, and that is when I take the Suez Canal now and build it maybe the next turn with going for the strategic territory, which will then net me 5 additional draws and also 4 additional strength, making me even more threatening, hopefully making it that I can maybe draw a war, which already could improve my position by quite a lot, and if I don't get a war, I might get some strong impacts that I can work towards, and with that I think the Suez Canal is just extremely strong here. Those draws in this position are extremely strong for me here, and so I really wanted to go for the Suez Canal. First I will increase my population to get out of corruption. I will take the Suez Canal. I sadly can't use the masonry to build the first 2 steps because I don't have the necessary amount of resource. I could already develop the team sports with the breakthrough, and I thought about it because who knows, maybe there's the chance that Pajada could cancel the scientific cooperation pact, but he might go for scientific method, and I felt like that's also with him having the revolutionary idea, he will probably keep the pact, meaning that I hopefully will get another opportunity to develop the team sports with the science discount, and with that I at the end was willing to spend my last civil action on taking the cavalryman, because I will now get a lot of draws, and with the cavalryman I just am prepared for H3 tactics. I might get something like mechanized army. If I get the modern army, then it would be quite difficult going for both tanks and modern infantry, so having the cavalryman I think is just quite nice and increases my potential military strength. Additionally, it makes sure that the ocean liner service is discarded before Pajada's turn, meaning he can't go for that wonder. I do think that would be very strong for him, and Brightfuture, with having already some solid food production, might not go for it. He might, because he has the engineering genius in hand, but he also might not. So the cavalryman also makes sure that Pajada won't have access to the ocean liner service here. I will get my first H3 draws here, and I actually get 3 impacts immediately. Impact of agriculture being at least a neutral event, impact of culture and progress being impacts that I could work towards, so I was already quite happy about that first draw. Also, we are now at the beginning of H3, so we can maybe take a look at the overview. And I do think I have an interesting position here. I still have only the 2 culture that I scored by seeding the Cold War, and apart from that, not a single more culture from anywhere. But I have a strong economy. I have some very solid food income, thanks to the Forbidden City with Homer. I have a lot of free population. I will have some very strong resource production, especially once I finish the Suez Canal, and with that strategic territory I will just get a lot of draws. And depending on what draws I get, it might maybe define in which direction I will go in this game. Do I want to try to set up something with the military? Do I want to try to set up for something peaceful? And yeah, so with that, I was thinking that I have a solid position, but of course I'm a bit behind culture, but I mean not that much. 30 culture to Brightfuture, you can easily overcome that, and especially Brightfuture after getting hit by that spy, still being on 2 military actions with being quite a bit behind in strength, could be still in danger of getting hit by another spy, and that was also a reason why I went for the spy, because if I go for a war, he might go for rifleman, go for more strength, he might actually be able to defend against an aggression. So with the spy going for the first one, I also maybe make it more likely they can go for an aggression at the next turn as well. So I do think he has a challenging position. He has the culture lead for now, some solid production. If he can stabilize, he's definitely in the game, but he is in a vulnerable spot here. While Pajada has more resource production, can easily go for some cheap upgrades for his science, might still be able to go for the selective breeding, and can build up his economy that way. He actually missed out on the leader. With him having Nostradamus, that could be a sign that maybe that the iconoclasm is coming. Or maybe he just didn't find a nice opportunity to go for Maria here. And so Pajada, I think, has the more solid position in Brightfuture, but still needs to fix some things. So generally, I was somewhat happy about my position, but I also need to put some work into doing the right choices in H3 in order to overcome the culture gap. Brightfuture builds a cannon, plays the reserves resources, takes the constitutional monarchy. Maybe he can do revolution at the next turn to get more military actions going, increases population, builds another cannon, is now 24 strength, but again he's only that 1 card in hand, doesn't get any new draws, so again I have a guaranteed aggression against him. Pajada seeds is willing to take a bit of risk here, which could also be an indicator again for iconoclasm. Maybe he wants to reveal that just as quickly as possible, but he gets punished here because he of course knew about the Cold War that I've seeded with Nostradamus, and he was still willing to push. There might be some events that are helpful for him, so it could definitely be the right decision, but in this situation he gets punished, and I do think the additional signs are very helpful for me and for Brightfuture. Then Pajada will destroy a farm here, builds the rifleman, reveals the classic army tactic, plays the reserves for food that allows him to increase his population. With the frugality, also makes sure to not have any famine. With that, he makes sure to have an unhappy worker, which allows him to take Mandela, making sure that he gets a new leader going immediately, increases the amount of civil actions that he's having, takes the efficient upgrade and the selective breeding to maybe be able to go for some food upgrades. At the next turn, he could maybe do a very big economical focus turn where he goes for both upgrades to scientific method and the selective breeding. And yeah, I mean, I think this early Mandela is certainly quite strong for him. Now it is my turn. I again have a guaranteed aggression against Brightfuture. I might also consider start pushing some impacts in there, but I do think the 5 additional signs are very useful for me, especially with a card that will be revealed during my turn. So I go for that spy. The 2 spies in the Cold Wars have really extremely helped me here. I got 16 additional signs out of those 2 aggressions and that event, and thanks to all of that additional signs, and also with having the pact, I have saved even more signs. I now have enough signs to actually go for that communism here, which I think is a very strong choice for me here. Because the communism just makes sure that I have a government form, I will have a lot of civil and military actions to work with from now on. I even increase my resource production. And I just have lots of military actions. I will get a strategic territory, I will get those additional draws. And with that, I thought there's a good chance that I might be able to go for some military. The problem being there is a Gandhi in the game, but now I have that many military actions that I could even go for a war against Gandhi. And so I think the communism is just extremely strong for me here, and I was willing to pick that up immediately, even though that means that I kinda have to delay the Suez Canal by another turn. Or I don't necessarily have to delay it. I could finish the Suez Canal right now, increase my population to avoid an uprising issue, but I would have some unhappy workers, there could be some events that could potentially punish me. I mean, I'm prepared nicely for the civil unrest because I can only lose 2 culture at this point. um, but yeah, nonetheless, at the end, instead of finishing the Suez Canal and being vulnerable with my happy faces, I developed a team sports, built one team sport. I do think that also if I finished the Suez Canal, I had some difficulties finding a nice use for the last civil action. I guess not really, I could finish it, increase my population and develop the team sports already. Here I maybe make a mistake, or not really a mistake, but maybe I miss out on a nice opportunity. Because I will do something at the next turn, which I think which I think is quite a nice idea. But that I maybe also could have done already this turn, because now I will build those 2 stages, just making it that I can finish the Suez Canal at the next turn, and then still have lots of civil actions to work with, also depending on what draws I then will be getting with the strategic territory, and I will increase my population. However, instead of building those 2 steps with the Suez Canal, an interesting thing that I could have done here is to build a 3rd farm. And as a little spoiler, I will actually do that at the next turn, but of course it probably would have been better to do it already now. I don't think I considered it that much. I think it's something that I overlooked. And of course, just building a 3rd farm is maybe also not the most obvious thing to spot in this position, but I think it's quite strong because I have an impact of agriculture in hand, the farm is very cheap with James Watt, and there's a red cross in the game, so with those factors, with me having masonry and now a lot of civil actions, I might have good chances to actually maybe even build the red cross in one go. And with that, I do think building that additional farm is a nice idea, and maybe I should have actually already built it this turn. I will build it at the next turn. Even at the next turn, I think it's still a nice choice, but it would have been better to already build it this turn. Of course, it would be a commitment, but I think it would be a commitment that I think is worth doing. So I do think that was a small oversight by me here. I will then increase my population. I do get some draws. No war yet, but even more impact. So I really have some impacts that I can already work towards, which I was happy about. Of course, ideally, I also would like to get a war at some point, but I have this mechanized army tactic. I have taken the cavalryman, and with that, I can make sure to go for this tactic if I get air forces, and maybe with the strategic territory, a war draw, that certainly could give me a lot of potential. Now it's Brightfuture's turn. He will do a revolution into the constitutional monarchy, copies the Napoleonic army tactic. With that is a 29 strength, and with that, if that is a defense scout, or if he is drawn one with those 2, he's not vulnerable to an aggression any longer, but I have no aggression anyway. Now it's Pajada's turn. He cedes, and a vast territory is revealed. And as you can actually see, I actually was willing to bid for that one quite heavily. The reason for that being, I mean, I have to send an army away now, that is quite expensive, but I have just drawn that mechanized army tactic, and with that I don't really need the swordsman. I can rebuild a knight as a cavalryman directly, and of course it's very expensive, but I still maybe can use the population somewhat nicely. It could make it even more easily possible for me to maybe go for a red cross. And I have the Suez Canal, so I get a bit of additional resource production out of it. I also prevent my opponents from getting that, which I do think would have helped them quite a bit with their yellow bank that they are having right now, especially Pajada, who, if I wouldn't have bid the tie, would be the one winning it, and maybe even just for 1 or 2 units. I do think that would be very strong for them, and so I was not really certain if it is worth it for myself, but I thought maybe it actually is. And then with the denial factor on top, I was willing to send an army here, and at the end I'm actually the one winning it. It's quite a bit expensive, but I also have a very nice yellow bank now. I will be able to save up a lot of food, and I can just rebuild with building cavalrymen and cannons. Now it's Pajada's turn. He develops the scientific method, goes for 1 upgrade for free with the urban growth, another upgrade for free with this efficient upgrade, goes for the selective breeding, goes for 1 upgrade, takes the military theory, goes for another upgrade. So he indeed goes for that very economical focused turn, takes the military theory, which could be very helpful for him for the military. Now it is my turn. I'm actually the weakest, but I myself haven't seeded any more strength events, and I have that many strong impacts that I can push this, so that I think I need to start pushing here. And this turn I thought that I had the idea of building that additional farm, and I will actually do it at the end. And with that I started with seeding the impact of agriculture. There are certainly other impacts that might end up being stronger, but those are also more uncertain. If I want to go for a lot of war, then impact of culture and science I might not be able to fulfill. For the impact of progress I need the right technologies, so I think impact of agriculture is a first good seed. A good first seed. The historic territory is revealed. This time I was not willing to bid that much. I don't want to lose even more units, especially because I don't need the happy faces. It would only be for the culture, and I do think that would compromise my position too much. At the end, Brightfuture is actually the one winning that, but it's very expensive for him. He loses 2 expensive units, and that could potentially weaken his position by quite a bit. He also does need the happy faces. Maybe he is hoping to just stay in front with the culture and don't get punished by the military. But I do think that's a risky plan. I'm not sure if I would have been willing in his position to bid that much. Maybe he was hoping that he could push the price and got punished by that. So he has now a bit of a culture lead, almost 50 culture, but also he is a bit vulnerable again with his military. But for now I have lost a bit of strength, so for now he is maybe relatively safe. This turn I started by finishing the Suez Canal. Then of course I get the strategic territory, meaning that I can't take that back, but I was very convinced that I definitely want to do that. I want to see what additional draws I will get. I was hoping that maybe I could get a war and start building up towards some mechanized army tactics. So I finished the Suez Canal. I do get the additional draws. Sadly, as you can see, I had some nice draws so far, but I do think those 5 draws are not the most exciting. But I get 1 more seedable impact, so that's still fine, but I don't have a war yet. So I, at the end, might need to maybe at the end focus a bit on a peaceful solution. So let's see how that will work out. I will start my turn by increasing my population, and as you can see, this time I spotted the opportunity of building an additional farm with James Watt. Probably I should have done it the turn before already, and of course it might seem like a bit of overkill at this point with my nice yellow bank, but it's just very cheap. It helps me with that impact, so it also just gives me 3 additional culture at the end. Potentially, if I go into a peaceful direction, it could also help me, for example, making something like an impact of balance extremely big. I was really eyeing that copy of multimedia and thought that if I, at the end of my turn, don't get any war draws, I might just go for multimedia. And there's the red cross in there, and going for the red cross and still getting a nice amount of population going. For that I also might need the help of the additional farm, so I thought that was still a nice idea and is maybe still not too late building that. I then take a copy of reserves, I take a copy of patriotism, just making sure to have a lot of additional resources available for the military. I could have taken a space flight, maybe already orientating myself into a more peaceful approach. But I wanted to have the additional military action from the patriotism, with potentially Brightfuture going for Gandhi now, which maybe also was a reason why he was willing to bid that high on the historic territory too. And there are still some other wonders that I could go for, especially the Red Cross, which I might block myself from if I take the space flight here. So instead I take those yellow cards, I increase my population 2 times, and then I build a cannon For now I'm at 26 strength, I'm not the weakest, and but I don't have the strength lead for now. I could have maybe also played a turn where I build a cavalryman directly, maybe even revealed a tactic already, but I kind of thought it would be better to keep the tactic in hand for a bit, because knowing that the tactic is available will maybe allow Brightfuture to copy it sooner and to not do the investment into the rifleman, which he otherwise maybe wants to do with going for the Napoleonic army tactic. I keep a bunch of impacts. I actually discard the international truce. I just think I want to rather seed some impacts, and as you can see, still no war drawn. Instead, the impact of wonders, which is not really that great of an impact for me. Brightfuture, as kind of expected, goes for Gandhi, and then I wasn't happy to see that also goes for the multimedia. I really thought going for the multimedia just might set myself up nicely for a peaceful game, maybe allowing myself to go for the impact of science, maybe impact of culture or something, and I then maybe could just build up some culture peacefully. However, Brightfuture is denying that option, and maybe at the next turn I again have to build up some more military, hoping that I will still get that war drawn in time, but I also still have a bit of time left, and I have already seen a lot of cards, so the chance that I get a war, I think, should be quite fine. Brightfuture then takes the urban growth, increases his population, builds the cavalryman, putting himself at 26 strength. I didn't necessarily need to build that cannon at my turn, but I saw that Brightfuture very likely will go up to 26 strength during his turn, so having built that will now make sure to not be the weakest at pajadas in my turn. Pajada seeds, and the iconoclasm is revealed. That was somewhat expected, with him not caring at all about getting an H2 leader going, with immediately going for Mandela. I guess that would have been nice anyway, but now James Watt and Nobel are removed. Still, maybe a bit unfortunate for Pajada that the event could have been revealed earlier. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to build it farm with the discount. Brightfuture might have missed out on some signs, so it was read on the later part of the deck, and for Pajada it would have been preferable if it would have been revealed earlier. So a bit unlucky for him that at a point when the Cold War was revealed, that was revealed right then when he was the weakest, and the iconoclasm was rather late, so a bit of an unfortunate ordering here for him in the event deck. This turn he builds another arena, has now one excess happy face at least, and takes some yellow cards to maybe have a lot of resource available to defend himself. At my turn, I again want to push an impact into the deck. Again, I was not really willing to make a big commitment into one of those swingy impacts, instead seeded the impact of government. I was thinking about going for the civil service this turn, and then that is actually already a very strong impact, especially against Brightfuture, not that much against Pajada. I seed, and there's actually another colony revealed. And as you can actually see, I again was willing to send Napoleonic army to win that colony. And again, I was not totally certain. Again, I didn't want to give that colony for cheap to one of my opponents, so I was willing to push the price. I'm not even sure if I was willing to push the whole amount that a Napoleonic army would give me. If I remembered correctly, maybe even was just willing to push something like 11, just making sure that if one of my opponents wins it, they have to pay a big price. Of course, losing that many units is bad, but again, I don't really need the swordsman. The additional science will actually improve my turn by quite a bit. I still have the Suez Canal, and actually the impact of government got just seeded by me, meaning that I also get 3 additional culture for that. I have lots of civil and military actions, and at the end I was fine with me winning that again for Napoleonic army, even though that is definitely somewhat expensive. At my turn, I then go for the air forces. I take the science from the autonomous territory. That will help me a bit this turn, as it will allow me to develop both civil service and a cavalryman. And I will take the air forces. I take Marie Curie. I could still wait for Pierre, but I do think the additional science production from her is quite useful, and I get the culture production going earlier. She's available now for one civil action. At one of the next turns, I might just want to go for the Red Cross, which might take most parts of my turn, so I think now is a good opportunity to get a leader going. And then I have still 4 civil actions left. I could potentially also develop Air Force or something, but I have that impact of progress in hand. I've seeded the impact of government, and I have still the scientific cooperation pact and a decent amount of science. And especially also with that revolutionary idea being available, I was willing to take the civil service, develop it, take the revolutionary idea. I have now the amount of 11 civil actions and 8 military actions, so that's definitely something that you don't see every day. I have now 14 resource production with the Suez Canal and the communism, so I was thinking that has quite some potential. I still have a culture gap to overcome, but I already have some good impacts in there. I have more in hand. I could still draw a war, and so I was thinking that I have different ways on how I could close that culture gap. After taking the revolutionary idea, I have 2 civil actions left, and I will use those to first of all develop the cavalryman with the Scientific Cooperation Pact. I will build a cannon, and I will also reveal the tactic here, because I don't want to be in danger of an aggression. And while it's a bit bad that I reveal it to Brightfuture, I do think he will have difficulties going for a lot of those. And also, of course, very important, during my turn I get the air forces, so in case I should still go for draw a war, I then will be able to go for a lot of strength and damage one of my opponents. With my last civil action, I could potentially just take something like modern infantry or tanks to keep myself maybe in 16 food, so that I can just take and finish the Red Cross. However, even when I increase my population with my many civil actions, even if the Red Cross is in the 3 civil action area, I could take it, play the reserves, finish it, and I even would have some civil actions left over. So at the end I just was willing to increase my population here. I again will get some draws, and now finally I have the war in hand. And I was definitely relieved to see it. I thought even without a war I might be able to pull something off, but as you can see, the second copy of multimedia is gone. I might just need to go into movies, and who knows if I don't have the chance to get into Red Cross, if it will be enough just by impacts. But now I have this war, I have the air forces, and with that I have felt very comfortable about my position. Brightfuture will try something to maybe reduce or maybe make it impossible that he gets hit by a war, but Pajada rejects that loss of sovereignty pact. Brightfuture this turn will go for Gandhi, develops the multimedia, is willing to play it a bit greedily. He has of course Gandhi, but both Pajada and I have enough military actions to still play aggressions and wars against him. But on the other hand, maybe he needs to play it a bit greedy, because even in a peaceful setup with maybe being better prepared for impacts and wonders, we still could have an advantage over him. So maybe he just needs to play it a bit greedily here. The Spencer Warrior even goes for another lab. With that he makes sure that he has enough science to go for Rifleman at the next turn to fulfill the Napoleonic army tactic. Of course he could just go for copying the mechanized army tactic, but maybe he would then have to dispense something, or maybe he has even modern army or something in hand. Now it's Pajada's turn. He will go for an armed intervention against Brightfuture, costing him maybe some draws, but making sure they gets a bit of additional culture against him. He plays the reserves for 5 food with the Silk Road bonus, increases his population, builds a knight, again plays the reserves for food, has now just enough food to increase his population again, goes for a Rifleman, and then he has enough civil actions left to take the Engineering Genius, but more importantly those air forces. And I was a bit worried about seeing that, because the thing is, Pajada has 7 military actions. He can declare war against Brightfuture, and with the patriotism he has then 2 military actions left, or even 3 with the Silk Road bonus. And then he can build 2, maybe even 3 air forces. He needs to destroy some things for that, but if he has a war at the next turn, he might be able to deploy a very big war against Brightfuture. I can't really go for a war already this turn. I also need to wait for the next turn, but if Pajada declares the war first, and it might end up being a big one, I was a bit afraid that maybe he could even steal that much culture that there's not enough left for me to take, even though I thought probably that's unlikely, but still nonetheless Pajada might get a big war out of that, and with that, if I go for a big war, we might just both go for a big war, and the war might not help me closing the culture gap against Pajada. So I was a bit worried about that and lost a little bit of confidence again in how this game will turn out at the end. And now it is my turn. I again want to push an impact into the deck. This time I was willing to go for the impact of Progress, which will be a good one against Brightfuture. Against Pajada it will depend on what techs I will get, but if I get the satellites it could still end up being a very good impact against him. And so I seeded the impact of Progress into the deck. The immigration is revealed, no one gets hit by that. I can play the revolutionary idea, develop the air forces, build one, making sure that I'm not in danger of getting hit by an aggression, and thanks to my absurd amount of civil actions, I can do that, and I can take the red cross, play the reserves for food, and finish that for 30 culture from the red cross itself. And then there are 8 colonies in play, so a 38 culture red cross. That's certainly quite strong. As you can see, I will even have overtaken Pajada, so I was very happy that the red cross got revealed after Pajada's turn, otherwise I would have felt a bit uncomfortable. Now I have already closed the culture gap, and despite me not putting that much effort into preparing for the military, thanks to having actually 8 plus the patriotism 9 military actions, I can declare war against Brightfuture, go at least for another mechanized army tactic, and in case the military theory will be available for me at the next turn, and it's a card that can't be denied by Pajada, only by Brightfuture. I could even go for an Air Force on top. I might need to do some destruction, but still the Red Cross made me feel like I have a bit of a better position again, because I have now closed the culture gap already. I will get some draws here. I draw another copy of the mechanized army tactic, impact of harmony in population, which both probably are not the best impacts for me. Brightfuture goes for the Manhattan Project. He still has that engineering genius in hand, so it might be a helpful way for him to prepare himself for the military and at least also score 6 culture. He maybe still needs to hope that there isn't anything bad happening to him, but of course he also knows that I had lots of draws. Pajada was willing to miss out on draws, which I saw as a sign that probably he might have a war already in hand. And then he will go for some upgrades here, getting out of corruption, going up to 33 strength. Now I was interested to see, will Pajada go for that war? I thought he very likely will, but he actually only goes for an armed intervention, which probably means that he doesn't have a war available. Maybe he has one, but wasn't willing to go for the destruction, because the armed intervention now allows him to steal some culture and take the last wonder away from me. So maybe he valued that quite highly. With me having that many draws, I likely might have an impact that I can evaluate with it. So maybe he actively chose the aggression over the war, but I still think maybe he just didn't have a war available, because I do think that just would allow him to steal a lot of culture from Brightfuture, but who knows, maybe he can't easily go for the United Nations then, because he needs to spend 3 civil actions to, or actually 4 to develop air forces, play patriotism, destroy 2 things, and build those air forces. So maybe he could have even actively chosen the aggression over the war, but maybe he also just didn't have a war available, which then would be a bit unlucky. He takes the rockets and the democracy, making sure that the age will end, not allowing me to prolong the game by another turn. And at my turn I have that war in hand. It will cost me a bit of destruction, but the military theory is actually available, and with that was just too big to not go for it, especially with no wonder being left. So I go for that war against Brightfuture. I increase my population 2 times, I destroy a mine, I can play the patriotism, go for another army, and then I have used all of my military actions, but thanks to the military theory that I can take and develop, thanks to the Scientific Cooperation Pact, I then can destroy 1 more coal mine and build another air force going up to 80 strength. The remaining civil actions, I take a copy of satellites, computers, and movies. With computers and movies, I maybe have some options regarding impact of culture and science, but probably I will just go for the satellites for the impact of progress. And now I have 80 strength. Brightfuture will be able to finish the Manhattan Project, but won't be able to do a lot more, so I will steal a lot of culture. And at that point, I was thinking that my position should be looking quite good. Also, I think it's definitely quite nice. I have 11 civil actions, and with having played a patriotism this turn, 10 military actions, and I put all of those actions to use this turn. So that was, I think, quite nice being able to achieve that. And yeah, I mean, that many military actions allowing me to declare war against Gandhi, and then actually building 4 units, which is also not something that you can see very often. At the next turn, I might have to decide whether I want to seed impact of culture, science, or maybe just go for an aggression. H4 starts now. In Brightfuture seeds, the popularization of science is revealed, which gives a small benefit to Pajada against me in Brightfuture. Brightfuture this turn will just finish the Manhattan Project, going up to 46 strength, scoring 6 culture along the way. Increases his population, plays the reserves. He could build a warrior, but instead he builds a religion, could be an indicator that Impact of Happiness might be in the deck. He then takes the computers and the mechanized agriculture. Now it's Pajada's turn. He offers a military alliance to Brightfuture, making it that I steal less culture out of the war. He could still go for an impact with the United Nations. He goes for the democracy, finishes the United Nations, but he actually doesn't have an impact, so only gets the 16 culture, goes for another arena to have full happy faces, at least gets again +1 from Mandela for excess happy faces, and then just takes a bunch of cards. Now it is my turn. I could see the impact of science, but then I kind of would need to build an additional alchemy to go up to 8 science, all for computers, but I kind of wanted to go for satellites with the impact of progress coming. Impact of culture is not really that nicely achievable, and at the end I thought I can maybe score more points if I don't need to build that lab, and so I rather thought about going for the armed intervention here, especially because when I see there's also a chance that maybe an impact is revealed that I could actually improve still during my turn, and so I thought I might just want to go for the armed intervention. Pajada very likely is vulnerable to an aggression, but if he has 4 defense cards he can defend, and after now stealing that much culture from the war, I thought I am in a good position, and with that I decided to play the safe line, just go for 7 safe culture against Pajada with the armed intervention against Brightfuture, instead of potentially risking that the aggression will fail. I was hoping that with me now being at 107 culture, having more than a 10 culture lead, and I will also get a bit of production at the end of my turn, plus the nice impacts, that I have a good position and that I shouldn't take any risks here. I developed the satellites, I can increase my population 2 times, I will build 1 team sports, both my opponents have full happy face, so impact of happiness could be in there. Could build another team sports, which also helps me for impact of architecture and competition, but instead I build a religion. I actually think I discarded impact of variety, but it's a safe cultural production, and I'm only missing 1 happy face now to have the full amount of happy faces, and then I don't have knowledge about impact of competition, and so I disband a cavalryman, and I will actually build an additional farm, which gives me 3 safe culture for the impact of agriculture, so I make sure that 1 impact that is potentially weak, the impact of happiness, is fixed, and I build an additional farm here. That's then the end of this turn for me. I'm at 110 culture, meaning I have a 14 culture lead before Pajada. Brightfuture at this point is too far behind to come back into the game. And then the first impact is the impact of progress, +26 for me, so almost a perfect impact of progress. Pajada has a strong impact of progress, but still I gain 6 additional culture against him. There's the impact of agriculture, which also allows me to get 6 additional culture against Pajada. Then there is the impact of architecture, which was maybe seeded by Pajada. He gains 2 points against me. There is the impact of balance, also maybe seeded by Pajada or Brightfuture maybe, gaining him another 6 points against me, so he's getting a bit closer again. But the last impact is again for me. It's the impact of government, and with having that many actions, that's actually at +31, giving me +7 against Pajada, who actually also has a respectable amount of +24. Brightfuture gets +18, and that means at the end I'm able to win this game. Pajada finishes 2nd, and Brightfuture is at the 3rd position. And I do think that was quite an interesting, and for my side also a fun game to play. I almost scored no culture going into H3. I think I went into H3 with only having scored the 2 culture from having seeded Cold War. I, at the end of H1, still needed to fix a lot of things for my economy, was low in science. But then I draw that Napoleonic army tactic, I had a bit of a strength lead, I got James Watt, meaning I could go for some upgrades here very cheaply, thanks to getting the strategy and having maybe a bit of some lucky draws with those aggressions and wars. The war over territory that I at the end didn't go for, but I still had the option. I then was able to get 10 science out of 2 spies and the Cold War, and that allowed me to go for the communism, and from then on my position just snowballed very nicely. I had the Suez Canal mainly just for the additional draws from the strategic territory. It still took a while until I found a war. Maybe I could have won without it, but not clear, I would say. I do think I could have had some chances still, definitely, but at the end, going for that very big war certainly was maybe the easier option for me to make sure that I have the amount of culture. Pajada maybe being a bit unlucky in some regards in the event ordering, with the Iconoclasm being late and the Cold War being revealed when he was weakest, which after that one time I think wasn't the case any longer, and also maybe didn't have a war available, so a bit unfortunate for him. Maybe if he gotten a bit more lucky, I could have still had chances to win with the culture gap, but it might have gotten close. Also, if the red cross wasn't available at the right time, so at the end I win this game. But if some things go wrong, I certainly also could potentially at the end not win this game. Also, it was maybe a bit questionable sending 2 Napoleonic army tactics away for those colonies. At the end it worked out, so I guess it was somewhat fine, but still it felt certainly somewhat costly, and I only did it because of there also being the denial factor involved. And yeah, so I think quite an interesting game. Lots of civil military actions from my side, and I'm of course very happy that I have another win here, and with that another win we can maybe take a quick look at the standings now. And there's also another game finished where I wasn't involved, and in that game Arne was able to win against Pajada and Brightfuture. And yeah, so far things are looking good for me. I was able to win the first 2 games of the season, being at 10 points. Pajada also at a solid start has already 3 games finished, being at 9 points. So if he plays a good second half, he can certainly overtake me again. Arne being at 7 points, also still being in the running, where both Danny Boy and Brightfuture didn't have the greatest start, but both of them also only have 2 games finished so far. So the next game that we are seeing will be my game against them, which might be an opportunity for them to score some important points, also maybe to increase the chances of not getting relegated at the end. Alright, then I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. I hope you're excited for the return of the Intermezzo season coverage. And yeah, with that I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.